Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Ratchet. On this episode of Andrew's GT40 restoration, he installs the fuel system. Run the title.
Welcome to the channel if you're new. If you're not, thank you for tuning back in for yet another episode. Like I've said, this one is going to be all fuel system related. So starting at the front, get the fuel caps installed, the fuel necks down to the fuel tanks. Going to be getting those fitted. Out to the back, I've got the fuel pumps to install, the filter, hoses, lines, etc, etc. So basically, I want to top and tail the entire fuel system in this episode and get another big item ticked off of the list. So as always, you can follow me on Instagram, Ratchet GT40, for photographic updates of the build as I go along. Please do hit the subscribe button. It's always appreciated to see the subscribe numbers grow. Leave me a comment. Really enjoy sort of interacting with you guys, hearing what you think about the project as we creep ever closer to, dare I say, getting it finished, in inverted commas. So anyway, I think that pretty much wraps up the usual. Let's get on with the episode. With the doors and hinges all fitted up nicely and lining through as they should, this now allows me to go ahead and fit the petrol tanks. If I'd had a bit more foresight at the start of this build, I would have welded a captive nut to the underside of the chassis where the bottom hinge plate bolts drop through. Because I didn't, I wasn't able to fit the petrol tanks any sooner and work on the fuel system side of things. And that obviously means if I do want to adjust the doors for any reason later down the road, I actually need to drop the petrol tank down. Now, because how I've remanufactured the fitting of the petrol tank, that won't be an issue and it won't be a difficult job. It's something that I could have designed out if I'd just had that little bit more forethought. But anyway, you know, it's just one of those lessons that it is what it is. So let me run you through these tank straps and we'll get these tanks fitted up. In all honesty, I've already fitted the passenger side, so this is just getting the driver's side done. So it'll be nice and easy for you to follow along. So these are the petrol tank straps that I made quite some time ago. Now, there was a first incarnation of these made out of aluminium, and some of you guys rightly said that over time these will work harden and be prone to cracking. So I remade them out of some 1-point-something millimeter stainless steel. They have been lined on the inner face with some bicycle inner tube to prevent any possible chafing against the side of the tank. And then to give the tank something to actually sit on, I've fitted these rubber pads as well. So I'm hoping it's ended up being quite a decent and well thought out way of fitting these tanks. Just something to add that is fueled by my mild OCD is the fact that I've punched into these straps D1, 2 and 3, so I know exactly what order they fit onto the car. And likewise, the passenger side ones have been stamped with the P and the number to follow. So should I ever drop these tanks, I don't have to worry so much about keeping them in the order that they came off of the car. Before I put the tank on, I thought I would just show you the inner seals just to see what's going on. And you can see everything's just looking nice and clean and tidy. I've got the fuel filter fitted, got the MSD ignition box into place. The back side of the panelling, you can see the sound deadening that I installed. And then just around the perimeter in a few little cases, I've just put a little bead of sealant just to try and provide some sort of watertight seal to the inside of the cabin. But it just looks nice and tidy, really. I'm happy, even though this is never going to be seen, it just looks quite smart. So I'm happy about that. So let's get this tank in. Next thing on the hit list, now I've got both the fuel tanks in, is I can get mounted the fuel pumps. So this is my arrangement, which I must admit I could have simplified further in hindsight, but it is what it is. It'll work perfectly. So we've got twin facet red pumps going through two one-way valves, and then a feed, which is this pipe here, that goes off through to a single king fuel filter and regulator, and then obviously up to the carburetors. Got everything clicked into place. I'm using these click hose clamps, which you need these funky little pliers for to fit and remove. I didn't want to use Jubilee clips. I didn't want to use the eared crimp clips. I wanted to stick with rubber hosing, if I'm honest. The braided hosing is just a pain in the backside, so I wanted to move away from that. This is E5 or E10 compatible, so I don't have to worry about that, which is good news. And I think that pretty much covers everything. I've just rewired the earths that are necessary. That grounds down to the bracket. And then I've got the power supply, which will connect into the loom. So I think I can get this on the car. Because I made the late decision to panel the lower portion of the engine compartment, that has put me in a bit of a predicament when it comes to running the fuel line across the width of the car over to the passenger side fuel tank. Now, what I'd planned to do was just loop it through and across a couple of the chassis members, and it was a nice easy run. But because I've added the panels, I've actually given myself a couple roadblocks that I need to get round. But I think I've come up with a plan that will work from every aspect. So let me run you through what I want to try and achieve. You'll have to excuse the mess because it's all a little bit chaotic at the back here. I've fitted the rear tie bars, got those cleaned up and fitted into place. I'm just trying to clear some stuff out of the roof space in the garage. I've got my handbrake cables just mocked up in place because I was checking clearances and tolerances around the brake lines and the fire suppression line. I've taken off the left-hand panel, which is the amazing thing about making that removable in hindsight. And what I'm planning to do is run the fuel hose through that little triangular gap there, run it over and across above the brake lines, and then diving it into the void behind the right-hand panel, and then through to my fuel system situated there on the driver's side. Now that does mean for these panels, I'll have to cut out a small notch for the hose to pass through. I'm going to have to remove this panel, possibly remove the brake and clutch lines, but you know, it's no big deal at this moment. They might be able to drop out the way. I'll just have to see how it all pans out. With the hose just taped into place, I was then able to suss out what I needed to trim away from these back panels. And I've just notched out a small piece here, which gives sufficient space for the hose to pass through. I'm going to put some sort of little rubber channel just around the edge of that cut, just so it acts as a sort of grommet, because I don't want any chafing on that rubber pipe. And then it can all go back into place. I'll do the same for the right-hand panel, get those brake lines fixed into position again, and that should be job done. So there you go, absolutely nothing to see. The hose passes tightly along the underside of the chassis rail before being picked up by a number of P-clips that I'd planned to use and then connecting onto the fuel tank. So from an initial head scratcher, it's now worked out to quite a decent solution that I'm happy with. So as with everything on this build, fitting the fuel filler neck parts wasn't just a matter of getting them out of storage and then putting them on the car. These needed a refurbishment. They were sprayed in primer previously, but that was all scratched and it was starting to rust through in places, and they were generally looking a bit tatty. So what I did was strip the parts back down to the bare metal and gave them 3 coats of Hammerite paint, and I let them sit for a week or so to fully cure before fitting them onto the car. So with the filler neck and the underside of the fuel cap all painted up nicely, I didn't want to go back to fitting these ugly rubber hose connectors and equally horrible Jubilee clips. So I let the OCD get the better of me, and I picked up some lengths of fuel resistant silicone hose and bought myself some nice JCS Jubilee clips. Now, I've already fitted one side, like I always do. So let me just jump into the car, get this second side fitted, and then I can show you how it's all come together. So I've got fitted into place the absolutely iconic twin fuel filler caps. These came with the car and were supplied by Tornado, and they do look superb. Very simple to operate. Open up there and you can just about see the underside of the fuel filler neck and the two bolt together, sandwiching the apron in between. So I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. A good amount achieved. I'm pleased with how it's all come together. Feels like it's a good item checked off of the list. You know, now I'm able to put fuel in somewhere and then it gets to somewhere. And if there was an engine, we could make some noise, but you know, we're a little way off that for one reason or another. Coming up on the next episode, I think I'm going to jump into fitting the headlight covers. It's a job that I fancy doing. It's going to be tedious, at a guess, so I hope it's not too time consuming and it makes for some interesting content, but we'll find out. You never know. So on that note, I will catch you guys next time.